With editing a house working, we're going to move on to being able to delete it. So on this little map nav here, right beside the edit button, we're going to add another delete. But to get things started, we're going to do it first on the back end. So we start in source schema house, and we go into the house resolver, so this class here, and we can do it, really doesn't matter where we put it. I'm going to put it below the update house. So we're going to start with decorating it with the authorized decorator, because it only makes sense. You have to be authorized to delete a house. And then we're going to decorate it as a mutation that's going to return just a Boolean. We can't really return a house because the house doesn't exist anymore. And we're going to say nullable false here. Because even if you don't have permission or the house doesn't exist that you say you're trying to delete, we can at least return false for that. So below that, we're going to do the function itself, async delete house. And just like that. Just going to get some spacing. I sort of like it in the middle of the screen a bit better. Okay, so what does this function receive? It's going to receive two things. The first is going to be an arg of the ID of the house we want to delete, and that will be a string. And we're also going to receive the context because we need to get access to Prisma and also the user. We have the authorized context because we know that we've added the authorized decorator above that's going to guarantee you have to be authorized to call this. And the return type for this is going to be a promise that resolves to a Boolean. Just like that. Cool. So inside of this function, we're first going to basically take the string ID and convert it into an integer because that's what the database wants it as. So we'll say const house ID, and that is equal to a parseInt of the ID in base 10. And now we're going to try to load the house from the database because we first want to just make sure that A, it exists, and B, its user ID matches the user ID who's making the request. So we'll say const house is equal to await prisma.house.find1. And to find one, we say where the ID is equal to the house ID, like this. So now we're going to check if we need to return false early. So when would we return false? We would return false if there's not a house, or there is a house, but its user ID is not equal to the context user ID. So if that happens, we're going to return false. Otherwise, we can come down here and we can perform the Prisma call to the database to delete that record. So for that, we're going to say, let's await Prisma a call to the houses table. We're going to delete, and to delete, we pass the same where the ID is equal to house ID. So at this point, we've awaited it being deleted, and we can return true, just like that. So now TypeScript is happy. It's being returned correctly, and yeah, we're good to go on the front end. So we're just going to refresh the page first, and I'm refreshing it because that's going to basically cause TypeGraphQL to regenerate the schema so that it includes our latest mutation. And this is sort of the final way our GraphQL API is going to look. We've got our house query, our houses query, and then we have the ability to create a house, delete a house, update a house, and we can also create an image signature. Now I see down here, we still have the hello query. I wasn't planning on doing this, but it sort of makes sense to get rid of this guy because it serves no purpose. So why don't you hop over to schema index, sort of the main place our schema is being declared. Highlight the dummy resolver, delete it, and then delete that from the list of resolvers that we're passing in. And then if you were to just refresh the page one last time, we should not have that hello query anymore. Okay, so onto the front end, and we're going to go into the house nav component that shows this part up here. So that lives in src components house nav. And we're going to start by declaring the mutation. So I'm going to do that up here at the top. So const delete mutation is equal to the GQL. So we say mutation, and what's its name? It's going to be delete house. And it's going to take in a variable called ID, which is a type of string. And we're going to call the delete house mutation. So ID, just like that. And we don't even need to ask for anything in return because we sort of don't care here. Just going to save this. So with the query written, I'm going to go into my terminal. So I'm just going to go over to a fresh tab here, and I'm going to run yarn code gen because I want those interfaces generated. So by running that, I can see I have my delete house interfaces generated. Oopsie. So now I can come and I can uncomment this line here so that I have the return type and the variables being passed to it. So with those in place, I can scroll down a little bit and go into the component itself, and I have to write the call to the use mutation hook. So const, what do I get back? I get delete house, and I'm also going to ask for the loading property back, but loading actually comes within an object here, and that's equal to use mutation. So we're going to pass it the delete mutation, and then we're just going to pass along the type hints to this. So that would be the delete house and the delete house variables. Perfect. So now we know that delete house will give us back, it doesn't say here, but it gives us back a Boolean, that true or false of whether it worked or not. Cool. So what we're going to do now is we are going to come into this part here, and we're already inside of the can manage, meaning there is a user and that user ID matches the house user ID. So we're just going to come below the edit. We'll add another space pipe space, and then we'll add, this time we're not going to do a link, we're actually going to do a button because we're not taking the user somewhere, we're performing something. So we'll add a button, and we'll add some props to the button. So this button is going to be disabled when loading is true. So this variable here, loading, when that becomes true, you can't click the button again. Its type is button, and we're going to do something on click, just like this. So this on click is going to be async because we're going to await the mutation to finish before redirecting the user somewhere else. But we're not going to just do it as soon as the user clicks this button. We're actually going to use the confirm dialog that pops up to ask the user, are you sure? So if confirm, are you sure? Just like that. Then we're going to do something. So what are we going to do? We are going to await a call to the delete house mutation, which requires the variable's ID. So we got to pass it the ID, and this will come from house ID. So when that finishes, I want to redirect the user to the home page. Now I can't do that yet because I don't have the router. So anywhere in here, I can just put it at the top. I can say const router equals use router. The import was already here at the top. So with the router in place, just below the await line, I can now say push the user to the home page. Now, right now it has no text, so we're just going to put the word delete in here. So why don't we go see what it looks like. Come back here, I now have delete. If I click it, it should say, are you sure? Cancel it does nothing. But if I were to say delete OK, it's making that call to the mutation. sending me back to the home page, and the home's gone. So now we're back down to 2 homes. So we've just finished the mutation and the ability to delete one of our houses, only if we're the owner of it. Okay, so we're at a point now where we can move on to the next video, which is deploying it up to Vercel. See you there.